Hello, gorgeous, and welcome back to Rose Colored Glasses with RK. I am RK, Rachael Karlyl, the host of your podcast. Today, I want to do an exercise with you. So, if you are listening in the car, you're going to have to do this with mental notes. If you happen to be sitting at work or somewhere, you've got a piece of paper and a pen, that would be ideal. So, today, we're going to talk about values. So, values is one of the big things that came up for me in the 2018-2019 transition period for me, where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. About 10 years into legal practice, just having started an MBA and getting fired from a job where I was too senior. So, in the midst of eating popcorn and having a beer at the movies, I decided that I had to do something differently. And that doing something differently was me identifying values and purpose, which we'll talk about in a later episode, but my values. So, as part of my values exercise, I was actually in therapy at the time because I just was not coping with life. The way in which burnout happened, the way in which I was showing up, I just wasn't really happy or feeling it. And my therapist at the time, who was this wonderful woman who wore wonderful, amazing, colorful clothes. And if anyone knows me, you'll know that that is something I value. Color and joy and awesome clothes. And she gave me a deck of cards. And these deck of cards were like your normal set, your 52 deck of cards. And these cards were values. And on these cards, they had different words. So they had things like knowledge, education, happiness, joy, recognition, all of these words. And all of these words obviously are going to mean different things to different people. And they are the way in which I believe, the way in which, not I believe, I define the way in which I defined, say, a word like success or empowerment or security is going to be different to the way in which you as a listener, you as a human, are going to define that word. So when you're doing this exercise, just keep that in mind, because if you do this exercise with people that you know and love and respect and that are around you, just because your word is maybe the same as one of their words, it doesn't mean that it means the same thing to them. Very important first lesson. So these deck of cards, as I said, had all these words on them, and all these words were essentially potential values that you could have or that you could hold. There was also a few blank cards because if you didn't necessarily hold the value, so if you didn't have or you didn't hold, say, one of the values that were on the 52 cards, then essentially you could write your own down. The purpose of the 52 cards was that you work from 52 and you essentially whittle down until you get down to, say, your top 5. So my top 5 are knowledge and education, justice, ethics, honesty, security, community, and acknowledgement or recognition. So they're my top 5. So as you can sort of see in those top 5, I haven't said things like family or children. I don't have children, but even if I did, I don't think they would necessarily be my internal personal values. And the reason why I say that is because I want you to really dig deep into this. I want you to question what your values were before you had children. Or now that you do have children, what are the things that you value for yourself? So for your own life. So maybe that is, maybe it is still recognition at work. Maybe it is moving ahead in your career. Maybe you just actually really just love, really love just peace and quiet. So what I want you to do is really dig deep. So if you don't have a deck of 52 cards in front of you, and if you do have one, that's amazing. You can also, I actually have a values exercise that I will put in the show notes where you get a list of words on a page and you circle. Essentially, you go through and circle all of the ones that feel like you. And then what will happen is you'll start to notice that they'll actually start to be categories of things. So you'll hear in my values where I said something like education/knowledge or ethics/justice. So for me, that starts to get a little bit more indicative of what those categories actually mean for me. And what I challenge you to do, instead of sort of saying, I value my kids or my husband or whatever it is, I want you to kind of understand, I want you to dig deeper and understand why it is that you value having those things. So is the fact that your children, one of your highest values is because you want to build a legacy that impacts the world. Obviously, you love your children and there's no one sort of doubting that. But I want this to be about you, not necessarily about the people around you. So I challenge you to really dig deep for yourself. So if I have a look at things like, so for me, knowledge and education, so that checks out. I have 2 bachelors, a master's, a graduate diploma. Actually, I have 2 graduate diplomas, and I am currently undertaking coaching, and last year I did a mastermind. So I am the queen of learning, super nerd, as I have self labeled at one point. My husband likes to remind me. It checks out, right? That's been something that's been there the whole time. I chose books over bikes when I was a kid. Didn't learn how to ride a bike until I was 28, fun fact. And here we are. That's comes out as one of my highest values. So knowledge and education. So for me, when that's challenged, that's really hard, right? So you don't know what you're doing, or I get my ability gets questioned because knowledge education is one of my highest values. It's really hard for me to hear when, or really I really struggle with the fact of like not knowing or not being able to do something. So, potentially why I didn't learn how to ride a bike until I was 28. One of my other big ones is security. And security for me more means around stability, consistency, having that kind of knowing what's going to happen in a way, which is crazy when anyone that knows me now, my life is very much along the lines of, I guess we'll just see what happens. I guess I might just start a podcast. I guess I might go take a job instead of having a business. I guess I might do a keynote. It's very I'm really letting go of the version of security or stability that I thought I needed, and more sort of going a little bit more confidently into the unknown with a foundation of stability that is something that I really needed. And that might have been from, the way that I was brought up, or it might have just been it's just what I wanted. I needed stability, and I had to build that for myself. The other ones that I have, justice and ethics. So the fact that I'm a lawyer is probably not overly surprising, but also, I think that probably that comes like from a very deep sort of thing. My parents were always sort of big on, honesty and ethics and ensuring that we were sort of doing the right thing. I guess you learn the difference between right and wrong, and that really started to instill in me on unfairness. Like my sister was getting bullied in high school, so I might have, threatened slightly when I was in grade 7 her bully, and then I got in trouble. Ridiculous. But justice and ethics has always been something that's really big and important to me. Community, so building a podcast, building a network, building humans that I align with. So this has been a weird one for me throughout my life. So I have had the same group of school friends for a really long time. Shout out to those people. I have had the same, essentially, one of my best friends I've had since I was born. Our mum and dad's were best friends, when we were growing up. And that has meant that I've had this consistency of friendship groups, which has been amazing. There are other people in my life that have kind of come and gone. And I think the communities that I've needed or wanted or been part of have really changed throughout my life. But it also means that I feel like I'm easily led. I'm like, oh, something shiny. I want to be part of that. That sounds really cool. What hasn't necessarily been consistent, though, is that sense of belonging within those groups. I think that has my sense of belonging to a community, to something bigger has definitely changed. And I think that this is growing and developing this value, as is my final one, which is acknowledgement or recognition. And I think this is more around, I think this now, the interpretation of it for me is more around impact as opposed to being told, hey, you're doing a good job. Obviously, my love language is words of affirmation, or that's how I receive. And I give by giving gifts. People that know me will know that. But the words of affirmation, I think, is something, this is developed into something bigger now, particularly with what I'm doing with coaching and speaking, in the sense that I don't necessarily need that external recognition, acknowledgement, validation. Of course, that's nice. Everyone loves getting that. But for me now, this is really about belonging, is about impact. And that is me now creating a community with all of you beautiful people listening, all the people that are following me on all the social media platforms. So building a community that is aligned, building a community that is with me, building a community that understands, and building a community or a tribe of like-minded humans. And I found that this has been something very significant for me, probably over more the last 5 years, when I've lost and gained some of the most important relationships in my life. So my community, my tribe as a human has significantly changed in different ways, but also significantly stayed the same in a lot of ways too, which sounds like a really strange thing to say, but I think our sense of belonging and community develops and changes as we change and develop as a human. And how we identify that and how we explain that and how we show up for that sense of community is different. So those are my values. So you can sort of see there that I'm not sort of saying my values are my husband, my kids, my job. My values are essentially cemented in the way in which I want to show up in the world, the way in which I do show up in the world. And what I found is they almost create, or not almost, they do create this internal decision making framework where I can sort of look back and go, is this contributing to my knowledge? Do I feel secure in this situation? Is this something that I'm going to be able to create impact for or get recognition? Does this feel right? Does this feel honest? Does this feel just? And so this helps me then create or make better decisions that are more aligned with me. So when I talk about things like aligning your inner self to create your outer world, that is exactly what I mean, in that I have now an internal decision-making framework in my values that I can use and relate to and utilize every decision I make. Sometimes things are going to feel as secure as I'd like them to, but it might be tying into something that is a bigger dream that is potentially going into my purpose. And for people listening to me for a while, even just on my content, you will know that my purpose is creating positive impact through meaningful interaction. And the meaning behind that has developed and changed over the last 5 years since that purpose has been created. But that is definitely something that we're going to go into in the next episode around purpose. But the values draw into that. So the values are one part of the internal map. And I hope that you can use the exercise that I've left down the bottom in the show notes, where you can go away and do this and actually start to think about this, really get deep. Don't just say that something surface level, like you think you have to say that your kids are your biggest value. Of course they are. We know that you love them. We know that they are valuable and they're amazing little humans and all of those great things. But it might be something deeper. It might be legacy. It might be love might want to be one of your biggest values. So actually think about it as opposed to just saying the surface level answer that you think you need to say, because you can start to get to know yourself a little bit deeper, start to build that self-awareness, and that inner map starts to be created. So you have that internal decision-making framework that helps you make decisions for the outside world. I don't even know what episode we're up to right now. I think we're up to episode 6. Episode 6 of the Rose-Colored Glasses with RK podcast. I am RK, Rachael Karlyl, and that is what I wanted to tell you today. I'm really excited for you to work on the worksheet down below in the show notes. And any questions, please leave them in the comments. Like this episode if you love the content. Share with someone that needs to start to get in touch with those internal value systems and wanting to understand essentially what their insides do that make outside decisions feel amazing or feel a bit ick. So please like, comment, share, and I will see you in the next episode.